Many years ago, when the internet was created, the structure was created in a way that computers talk to computers or people talk to computers. But now we're in an age of social media domination, and this social media structure isn't quite there yet. It's not been built. And how could it have been years ago when all of this was developed? We didn't know that people would want to talk to people through computers. I'm Beth Motter here with Tiernan Ray. Tiernan, this seems complicated, but it feels like an infrastructure needs to be built to better handle social media.
You summed it up beautifully, Beth. In the 1960s, when the internet was built, the creators of the internet, a small team of academics and industrial researchers, really didn't foresee that social would appear. They didn't even foresee that email would be a wildly popular application. So as a consequence, they never built what we call at ZDNet a personal protocol. The idea is that you would control all of your information rather than a corporation controlling your information when it comes to your identity. You can imagine that in simple ways, such as cookie data. You go to a website, that site captures your cookie data. And now Apple tries to help you opt out if you want. But basically, you have very little control over these traces that you leave. On a broader level, when you go to Facebook and you want a real identity, if I'm Tiernan Ray at Facebook, Facebook then owns that identity in the sense that it only exists inside their database, and I have to agree to Facebook's terms. They never ask me, Tiernan, how would you like us to use your data? That's never even offered to me. A personal protocol would be a means of having possession of your individual identity, either a real world identity, Tiernan Ray, or some kind of anonymous handle, let's say TR Space Cadet 21, if I never want people to know what my real world identity is. And the point would be, A, I would have control over what traces I leave, cookie data and stuff. I would have to grant permission for websites to use that data, and I would control how it gets reused by them. And then I would also have a choice to perhaps interlink, if I wanted to, my identities across social properties. So for example, Beth, now if you go to Facebook, if you're yourself on Facebook, it's totally separate from you on Twitter, totally separate from you on LinkedIn, on Pinterest, on Snap. Some people may like that arrangement, but for some people, it's a fracturing of your identity. You exist in these isolated instances. This is not the interconnected internet that we know and love. We love the fact that we can go to any website. We love the fact that we can connect to any computer. You can send email to anyone. Why is it the case that in social, where you have an identity, either a made-up identity or a real-world identity, those interactions exist as islands? You cannot connect what you do on Snap to what you do on Facebook. So a personal protocol, again, would allow you to span these different social environments if that's your choice. And it would be in a way not controlled by any entity. And the last benefit, Beth, is right now we have 5, 6, 7 social services that matter. They kind of do something similar. They all kind of get you to like stuff and look at stuff, and it all adds up to a signal that's for advertising purposes. And we have lots of algorithms that people don't know about that choose on Instagram what you see. You don't get to choose the algorithm for what you see. It's made up for you, and they have all kinds of arguments why it's great. But in a world where you control your information through a personal protocol, many more services would go to you and bid for, maybe even compensate you for your personal information, which would lead to a kind of a flowering. Let 1,000 flowers bloom in social. You probably, instead of having 6 or 7 that matter, you might have hundreds or thousands of social services that would compete to give you the best kind of, let's say, social experience, if you will. Some of them might still be like Facebook. There might still be a Facebook that exists to sell advertising against your newsfeed, but there might be other services that are completely devoid of advertising, that are not about advertising, that are subscription-based. You might even be willing to pay something for them. You might get compensated for participating in ways that are totally different from your experience on Snap or Pinterest or Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or any of those. So there would be a diversity, a greater diversity, which would frankly solve some of the issues that, the government is going after Facebook for, which is, you're controlling, you're monopolizing, we don't trust your use of information. All these issues might be ameliorated if there was a free and open market in which different social entities, both for-profit and nonprofit, could engage your participation.
Okay, Tiernan, so just to ask your personal opinion, do you think this social infrastructure should be made? Do you think it would be useful?
I would love to see it happen because I'm excited by and intrigued by both intellectually and personally by what a flowering of social network services would be. I think some social networks where you engage as Beth and I engage as Tiernan in our real world identities, but it's not based around advertising. And our content, let's say our posts, are not algorithmized, if you will, to monetize our activity, maybe be a nonprofit site. We might engage in real discussions. We might be able to determine those algorithms and have control over that in a way that's, I think, more social, frankly, more like real conversation, less like screaming at one another, maybe devoid of the thought bubbles and the amplification of sentiment that has been a terribly pernicious effect in society. Groups of people ganging up and being opposing forces, different viewpoints that where no one is talking to one another. So I think, yes, the development of a wide open field of social networks would probably preserve a lot of things we have now with Facebook or Pinterest, which is fine. But it might also lead to some other kinds of possibilities that are both grounded in an identity for you and I, but that have totally different modes of interaction. I think that's fascinating.
I think it could be interesting. I think it could be fascinating. And I'm with you. I think a social infrastructure like this would be a good thing for the internet. So, Tiernan, thank you for explaining this to us. As always, thank you all for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and stick with ZDNet for all things tech.